You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi everybody, and thanks for coming back to the podcast on a momentous day for me personally and for the show as well. This is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, sponsored for the entire month of September by Cedar Trail Gear. I am Mighty Blue, and I'm editing the show this afternoon on Wednesday, September the 29th. And I only realised an hour or so ago that today is the 7th anniversary of my 2014 Katahdin summit after my first ever through hike on the Appalachian Trail. In fact, it was my first ever hike on any trail. But not only is it that anniversary, it is also the 5th anniversary of this podcast with its Thursday morning publication. The first show was a pilot 9 days earlier, but the first proper show with an interview of a fellow 2014 AT thru hiker, Max Mishkin, or Barebag, was on the 29th of September 2016. And I scheduled the publication at 3 a.m. in the morning. I've never missed that deadline since then. How about that? You've helped me grow this show to nearly 300 episodes and we'll be passing the 1.5 million download mark next month. I've got to tell you, I'm pretty proud of that. You should be too. Today's guests are a husband and wife team, Deb Taylor and Danny Mooney, or Sundial and FIIK. They have an interesting take on hiking and its correlation with Ironman and triathlons, so I think you're going to enjoy listening to our conversation. Katie's out of Maine and about to hit the presidential range. She's been very deliberate in her hike and is really putting the reducing daylight hours to best use. Katie will be on after Deb and Danny. Finally, Winton Porter's Passing Through introduces us to Mountain Crossing's famous shakedowns. But before we meet Deb and Danny, here's Cedar Trail Gear. Now, we've all heard of leave no trace, and I hope that we all apply the principles, but sometimes, let's face it, it is really difficult to dig a deep enough hole with those small plastic and metal trails. Well, Cedar Trail Gear have come up with a solution, and like all good gear, their 3-point multi-tool has several important functions for you and the hiker in your life. This ingenious device will not only easily dig your cat hole to the correct depth, it can be used as a pick to loosen up rocks and stones in your outdoor bathroom of choice. And you can even use it as a hammer to knock your stakes into hard ground when you set up camp. It's truly that strong. I've used it myself and it works like a dream. It weighs just 9 ounces, is made of very durable aluminum, and is powder-coated in highly visible safety orange. Check it out at cedartrailgear.com, where you will learn of yet another surprising use for the 3-point multi-tool. Thanks, guys, for your support this month. It means a lot to me on behalf of the network, and as a bit of a bonus, I know that today's guests, Deb and Danny, either have bought or are buying one of your 3-point multi-tools. So let's meet them now. Here are Deb Taylor and Danny Mooney, Sundial and FIIK. And, oh yes, by the way, you'll hear a very reminiscent trail sound in the background every now and then. It's a train. And believe it or not, the sound of a distant train while I was on the trail is one of the soundtracks of my own hikes. So it was very welcome indeed. Here are Sundial and FIIK. Now, I said a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, I'm not sure actually, that we don't normally have SOBOers on the show, and somebody mentioned that I also don't have many section hikers. Jester normally speaks with section hikers, but we can both speak to whomever we wish. So this week's guests are husband and wife section hikers. They are Deb Taylor and Dan Mooney, or Sundial, and, as you're going to learn soon, FIIK. Hey guys, how are you?
Good morning, Blue. How you doing?
Doing great,
good.
Steve.
Good. Yeah. Now we're rather early. This is now 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm only on my second coffee, so we'll see how this goes, but I need at least 5 normally. So you and I started speaking recently, Deb, and you kindly suggested a few of this show's recent guests, which was very nice of you. But when I read a few things about you, I thought it might be nice to share some of your observations with our listeners. You told me that the episode with Bear recently had you kind of nodding your head, and that as the two of you are Ironman competitors, you thought that Ironman has a tremendous correlation to long-distance hiking. So how so?
First of all, thank you for having us on. And when I listened to Bear the other day, what was the term he used? Cognitive flexibility.
Flexibility, yeah. It struck me as well. Yeah,
it did, and you remarked on it several times, and that is Ironman. Like when you are training for a long distance race, you put in all the training, you put in all the time, you put in all the planning. But on race day in particular, you just have to be flexible with the plan and hope that it goes forward as you planned out. And typically it doesn't. Typically something comes up and you have to
Oh, really?
adapt.
How interestingly, this is why I was kind of surprised by that, because I would have thought the discipline you have because face it, a lot of hikers are not in the least bit disciplined. So as an Ironman, from my understanding, as a layman's understanding, you would need to be clearly disciplined. You would know precisely the pace you're going to do for each mile. So you're saying that stuff changes and you have to adapt to that as you go on?
Yeah, I mean, we are disciplined. There's no question you're disciplined in your training because you don't want to show up in race day undertrained because you'll just suffer. It's just a suffer fest because it's already a suffer fest. But things you can't control for sure. So you can't control the weather. So sometimes the swim actually gets canceled. There could be potentially too much bacteria in the water. The winds could be too high and too dangerous. I actually, on one of my swims at Nationals, got hit in the head with a jet ski while I was swimming. That is not an exaggeration.
Helpful. You don't get on the trail, I tell you.
So, it was a water safety jet ski, so I was not going fast, but it did hit me blunt in the head. Things on the bike, you get a flat tire, it changes. A lot of things change. And I would say the weather is probably one of the biggest things. So, at the end of the day, you might have a goal, but you're just trying to get to the finish line in some manner in some time. And so you just have to adapt as you go. And then the other thing that is very similar to hiking is the huge enormity of it all. And if you think of Ironman as I'm going to be racing from anywhere from 10 to 15 hours, depending on who you are, it would overwhelm you. And the same with hiking. If you don't break it into smaller chunks in your head, in your brain, then the whole thing could overwhelm you. But when you break it down into small sections, you can manage it.
Well, the difference there, I would have thought, I know that when I first did 30 miles on the AT in 2014 on my first hike, I remember I never really thought about the end because it was so damn far away. It was 6 months away. In your case, you do have a clear vision at the end of an Ironman race, don't you? Like crossing the line and getting it over with, I presume. So I would have said there's not quite the same comparison, but doing a section hike, I can say how long, for example, are some of your section hikes?
So the longest that we've been out in one continuous time has been when we just recently did the approach trail all the way up to Fontana Dam.
All right.
And we did it in the entire thing in 10 and a half days.
Right.
So, we were, that's a big plus for Ironman too. You are used to long days. You're used to persevering. You're used to the endurance of it. So we will do long days out on the trail. So as far as a mileage day, we don't get the legs that the thru hikers always get. So I would say the longest we've ever done is 22 in a day.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I've only ever done that once myself on a 6-month hike. I only did this 22-mile day once. Yeah. So Dan, I'm aware that Ironman is kind of its own culture, isn't it? It's like a subculture, I suppose. And that you guys all kind of hang out together and most of your friends are Ironman competitors. Tell us about that and what it's like to be part of that community.
Yeah, Steve. I mean, Ironman is, and I think that's what brought us into Ironman a lot was the community, the people you're with. They're all like-minded people, all with the same goals, and just a good group to hang out with. Going out for swims and bikes and runs together, a couple beers together. Everybody likes to finish a race.
You're not allowed to have beers?
After the race, of course.
All right.
But I think in correlating with the hiking community, what we're finding in the hiking community, the people are the same. You know, they're all like-minded people, but they're not the type A people necessarily that you get out of Ironman that can sometimes rub you the wrong way, just because they are so motivated and goal oriented. The hiking communities, it's chill. You know, the people are cool. They all come from different backgrounds, and what we're finding is we really like hanging out with the hiking community, maybe a little bit more than the Ironman community.
Maybe as the older you get, the more chill you become. I mean, frankly, in life, that should be the case anyway, shouldn't it? So perhaps that's what it is. And I know just for a moment, I want you to brag a bit, because I know that you've done pretty well in these disciplines. So tell us what you've done in the Ironman, both of you.
Go first there, Sundial.
Well, so the biggest thing you got to keep in mind is that races go by age group, and typically most races are a 5-year age group. So you are always competing. We are both 55. So you're always competing within, in our case, 55 to 59, if we were still racing.
So you're youngsters. You're youngsters then in that age group.
Well, that's the joke, actually, is as we all get older, and people normally dread getting older. In Ironman, the joke is, we aged up this year, so now we're the youngest in the age group, and you're supposedly going to be more competitive. Yeah. So, you know, at the Ironman level, the best I personally ever did was at Ironman Maryland, and again, we've done 7 of them. I placed 4th in 2017. And the way that the World Championships work, each age group is allowed so many athletes to qualify for the World Championship, which is in Kona every year. Right. And in that particular year, 2017, my age group had 2 slots. So I placed 4th, so I missed it by, only 2 slots. And so that was a big deal. We've gone to, you have to qualify for the Boston Marathon with a certain time based again on your gender and on your age. And we've gone 7 times, and I could have gone this year, and I elected not to go because my heart wasn't in it anymore. And if I take the slot and don't adequately train for the Boston Marathon, I felt like I was disrespecting the race, and someone else could have had the slot that I had qualified for. So I passed.
Right.
And then we both locally, we went to South Africa. We both qualified for the World Championships at the half Ironman distance. Nice. And we both went to South Africa, and that was an amazing opportunity because it is uncommon that, both spouses might get the chance to race. And so that was 2018. That was a special time.
Now, I'm not sure I'm going to keep this in, but when we spoke before, I said, I know you're married, you're Deb Taylor and you're Dan Mooney. And I was going to say, and you can tell me if I can keep this in or not, I was going to say, did you not change your name because you didn't want to become known as the Moonies? Sorry.
Well, you will have to ask Mooney about mooning the cog at Washington.
Okay.
Because he did.
Of course. Well, he's got the right name for it, hasn't he? Yeah.
That's right. Quite how could I not?
It would seem silly not to. So with that great background, you're hiking. So you basically you're Ironman as well, and you do the same thing because you are very much a team, aren't you? And that comes across very much, as I said to you before, in your YouTube channel, and we'll talk about that later. So, did you do the Ironman because of Deb, or did she do it because of you, or is this something you've always done together?
So, Steve, I think at the time Deb really got started with triathlon. She went. They have a race called the Iron Girl, and this was a sprint level. Was it that? Yeah. So it was a sprint, and she had some friends at a gym that she was working out with. And one of them said, hey, you're a good athlete. You should come out and try the Iron Girl. And she didn't really know much about triathlon at the time. She didn't even have a bike that she could ride. She had to borrow a bike. And so I went and supported her at that race. And we both just got really interested in it, and that's where it started. And that's where it starts for most people, is either just going to a race and watching and getting the excitement and signing up yourself. And in Deb's case, she got into it. It was different. It was exciting. It was cross training with swimming, biking, and running. And it was just a different way for us to work out and exercise and do something else together.
Because you're already quite, you're doing a lot of exercise anyway, weren't you, too? You've always done sports, haven't you?
Yeah. We've both been athletes for life, playing high school and college ball. And then, like I think Deb had said this before, but it's always been a team sport that we were doing.
Yeah.
I was a runner, so that even though running is a team sport in high school, I kept running after high school, ran with some people at work just to stay in shape. And then this took it to the next level.
Yeah, and Steve, I was a basketball player, and I actually played in college, and I went on a scholarship. And the only running I did was to keep in shape for basketball, because in those days, running was punishment. So that was the only running I did.
But isn't life a journey, though? I mean, look, you're now hiking, you were playing team sports, running. It's amazing how I've been talking about this recently with my girlfriend quite a bit, how things change as time goes on. It's difficult to plan too far ahead, isn't it? Because you just don't know what's going to be around the next corner. And so with that background, in a highly competitive sport, when and why did you look to become sweaty, smelly hikers, where there is, apart from against the, you want to finish the thing, but there's zero real competition amongst hikers. They want you to do as well as you want to do. So how did that happen that you suddenly decided that hiking might be a thing you'd like to try?
That's all you
Yeah,
do.
so
Yeah, Deb, by the way, is a planner. I've heard this before from Dan, so it's okay.
yes, I am the planner, which is partly how I got my trail name. So it started, we were actually doing them concurrently, just not, we were putting much more emphasis on racing. So in 2011, I read a book, like a lot of us read a book. And my book was Becoming Odessa by Jennifer Farr Davis. And I was just fascinated with this thought of what she had accomplished. She's a very good writer. And so it really jumped off the pages to me what she actually did. And we live here in Maryland, and the trail's about 75 minutes away. So I, again, liking challenges and liking to try new things, I said to Danny, let's go try and hike the Maryland section. And so we did
Hang on. What did Dan say?
Hell yeah.
There you go. You don't look to me, you don't seem to me the sort of person that he would say, no, I don't want to do that.
Not often.
She'd have went anyhow, Steve.
He wants to hang out with his wife. That's very nice. Right. So carry on. You thought the Maryland section. Did you know that the Maryland section was regarded as easier than quite a lot of it? Although not as easy as I recall, by the way, from 2019.
Yeah, absolutely not. Like, we know it now because of what we've hiked 900 miles of the trail.
Yeah.
But at the time, I mean, we didn't know anything necessarily other than what we researched about how to pack a backpack and what to take. So we definitely had way too much heavy stuff. We borrowed one backpack. We rented another backpack from REI. The packs didn't fit.
Excellent.
The whole
your
thing
pack
was
didn't fit.
So we did a pack swap because I was in agony.
So Dan's one that was fitting him perfectly, he gave to you.
I wanted to give him both, but
here,
he wouldn't go for that.
And it was, Steve, we thought it was the hardest thing we had done up to that time. The
Really?
Maryland section with the rocks and the hills. And like Deb said, we found out that was a very easy section of the trail. But when 3 days later,
you
when
didn't
we
start
got
in the whites.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Between the whites, and then even when we went down to Georgia, we thought Georgia was, we started off thinking, hey, we did the whites, this is going to be nothing. And Georgia turned out to be treacherous, and difficult. So
yes, it's a tough start. Yeah.
Yeah. Maryland was, and we've hiked Maryland a bunch of times now. And when you go back to it, it's like, oh man, this was pretty easy, comparatively.
Right now.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things you do pick up when you're hiking. You make comparisons, but ultimately, what is in front of you is the only thing you can take care of, isn't it? Yes. And the fact that it may be Maryland, it is easier than some other sections, but it ain't easy. I mean, none of this thing is easy at all. So, did hiking grab you immediately? Did you think it was, oh man, this is just what we needed?
It did. We actually, we were talking about the other day, the day we got back from Maryland, we had to go to a social event for triathlon. And I remember being there, and we had posted pictures on Facebook. So people were asking us, and I remember gushing about how amazing this trip was and how outside of our box, because neither of us grew up necessarily hiking or camping. And we loved it. But from there, we just kept prioritizing racing. So every year we got one hike in.
Right.
And
so hang on then. So what did you love about it? Because it was so different, I presume, to what you've been doing. What did you love about the hiking?
So for me, number one, I liked the challenge. It was not easy carrying a 30-pound pack.
You just want to be with Deb.
Well, that's true. It's it's good scenery when I'm following Deb down the trail. That's for sure.
Ooh, nice.
And then number two, it was hard work, but it had a payoff. At the top of every hill, there was a beautiful view. The trees, just the peacefulness of the hike while you were getting a good workout in, kind of checked all the boxes for us. It wasn't just something else to go do, is something to do with a payoff.
Well, much as you said earlier on, that this cognitive flexibility, you have to adapt to things as they change. But it isn't always lovely. There isn't always a great view, is there? How did the two of you cope with it when it sucks? Because it often sucks.
Yeah.
So that's Ironman too. The expression.
I can see, yeah.
The expression "embrace the suck" is Ironman. It's the AT. It's anything that's hard, which of course is what makes it worthwhile at the end of the day. So we are used to doing 100-mile rides in the rain.
Right.
So if I can ride my bike in the rain, I can certainly hike in the rain.
There is that, yes.
Yes. And it's, it's a sufferfest potentially in both, but the payoff is so tremendous. And the thing, it's still competitive for us because we like to put in long miles, or we like to finish, a state 3 days faster and we don't feel like we rush through it. We absolutely sit and look at the views without question. But that's the part that I think I love, because with Ironman and with Boston Marathon, there comes some pressure. And at this point in our lives, there's less pressure because we can sit and look at, a view for an hour, and it doesn't matter that the clock is still running.
Yes,
You can't do that in Ironman because that all counts.
By the way, just for a move on, I want to ask, and I hope you have reached out to Jennifer to tell her how inspirational it was for her. So, because even I get emails from people saying how my guests have inspired them. So I'm sure Jennifer would love to hear from you if you haven't reached out to her.
I actually have reached out to her and got nothing back.
Oh, okay.
So maybe now.
All right, Jennifer.
Steve will give you some credibility.
To be fair, in that case, Jennifer has obviously got way too many people inspired by her.
She does. She has inspired so many people. It's incredible.
You're
but I do
right.
follow her on social media. So.
Right. So what about gear? And you went with this cheap fitting and wrong fitting pack. Did you realize from that first hike that you needed to really dial this in? And how did you go about doing that?
So Steve, the one thing about Ironman that you learn is, everybody starts off with a very low level of equipment, right? They don't have the best wetsuit. They don't have the best bike. And what you learn is it's a lot more comfortable and a lot easier on you if you upgrade your equipment. So
there's a reason it's the best and the most expensive.
Exactly. And so just like hiking, I mean, you can spend as much money as you want to spend with hiking. So I think over the last 10 years, we have slowly been changing our gear out. And of course, Deb's doing all the research and she tells me about the next thing that we want to go buy. But it's been a process, it's been probably a 10-year process, buying a new stove that will boil faster and buying different sleeping systems. So it's taken a while, and of course things continuously change. So you just can't get comfortable with what you have. There's always something new to go out and research and buy.
That is remarkable, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
There's so much stuff out there, and then you end up sitting in shelters talking with people about the benefits or the lack of benefits of the tent you've got or the gear you've got. People seem to be gearheads all the time. I absolutely wasn't at all. I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
As long as it was decent, and I knew, and generally thought the most expensive was normally the best, and I tried to get as good stuff as I could. But after that, if it doesn't work for you, you then get a replacement, and then you move on with that new replacement, don't you? Until that doesn't work for you, and then you get another replacement.
And that's the main thing. It has to work for you, and that's where everybody will say these are the best shoes to go buy. This is what you need, but it isn't necessarily. It needs to work for you.
Yeah. Funnily enough, actually, when I went in 2019, I got to the 100-mile wilderness, and all my gear was holding up great. I had these darn tough socks, which I loved. They were fine. I had a Sawyer squeeze, which I loved, and it worked fine. But I replaced them both. It was almost like I reset the hike a bit. I got new socks. I got a new Sawyer squeeze, even though I didn't need to replace it. But I just wanted to go into the 100-mile wilderness. It was another section of the hike that I was doing. So that, talking to you about gear just now, it just came into my mind. That's how I felt about it. So, to be clear, a through hike wasn't an option at this time. What were you both working at? What was I know you are still working, aren't you, both of you?
We are. And that's why we're meeting at 6. That's why we're meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning.
There is that.
Yes. So I am a physical therapist,
right,
and then I'm also a high school basketball coach.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So in about less than a month, my days will be 12 and 13-hour days because I will be doing both full time.
Wow.
So.
Wow. And as a physical therapist, you're obviously aware of what goes on in the body. Have you seen this correlation between hiking and Ironman, how it breaks down a body or how it doesn't break down a body?
Yeah, and that's so the real reason we turned into so much of hiking and less triathlon, of course, was 2020, like a lot of folks, right? All the races were canceled.
Right.
And we just started hiking and discovered how much we actually loved it. But in 2021, the races are back. But even though we hike hard, hiking is a little kinder on our bodies. And both of us over the years have suffered a lot of running injuries. And it's, and that's just volume. That's not necessarily poor technique or the wrong shoes or anything else. It's just volume. And so both of us at this point can tolerate the hikes better than we can the long distance running.
How interesting.
Yeah.
How interesting. And what about you, Dan? What were you doing? What are you doing, in fact?
Yeah, so I am an engineer. Now I'm an engineering manager for a large defense contractor. So my days they're nonstop. I mean, I could work 24 hours a day and never get everything done. And so
that's called life, by the way. So don't worry about all that.
Yeah. And honestly, that's a lot of the hiking community is like you got to stop. Life's too short, and I think that's
Absolutely.
What we're both starting to find, especially at the age of 55. It's getting tough to work those long hours and still be motivated to do it.
That expression, life's too short, I more think of that death's way too long. So I look at it slightly differently. And you said a really interesting thing when we spoke the other day, Deb. You told me that about the waning, I guess, benefits to you both of successive Ironman races. Was that because you'd started hiking and some of your time priorities has shifted? Tell us about that.
I think yes and no. It had already started to wane for me, quite honestly. Right. And, so my first year, my second year, my third year of doing an Ironman, and we always did a different Ironman. We did not, the only Ironman we repeated was Ironman Maryland. And that way you're always getting a personal best, a PR, when it's a new race. So that's right. Always good. Cool. But the first three I did, when I crossed the finish line, especially the first one, I had no idea that I would actually be able to accomplish this despite all the training. And the raw emotion is so evident in the video and the pictures that, are as I crossed the finish line. And I cried. I absolutely remember just being so emotional and holy mackerel, I accomplished this amazing goal. And I felt that through the first 3 Ironman, and I felt that through the first couple of Boston marathons, because you turn down Boylston Street and there's nothing like finishing. We've done a lot of marathons, and there's nothing like finishing Boston. But by the 4th Ironman and the 5th, there was no emotion. I was happy. I was proud of myself, but it wasn't that honest, deep joy. And when I sat down and really analyzed that in myself, I had lost some of the love of the sport, which had attracted to me in the first place, because I knew I was going to make it, barring any sort of unknown injury or my bike breaking. I was going to make it to the finish line. It was just a question of how fast. When we started hiking, like Massachusetts was one of our goals. I grew up in Massachusetts at the Mount Greylock, at the base of Mount Greylock when I was a kid. And we just wanted to go to Massachusetts and finish. And when we crossed into Sage's Ravine, because we went Sobo, I cried. I was filming it and I had no idea.
It was bloody exhausting.
See, there, Steve, that's where you got to be a section hiker, because we went in the fall and we had the most amazing impression of Massachusetts with the foliage and the colors. It was awesome. We had no bugs. We had nothing that everyone else talks about.
I'm sure that's the best part of section hiking, actually. You can choose when you go. And that must say you see an entirely different trail to what I've seen, which is kind of interesting to me. So I've got to get to your trail names now, because I must say this made me laugh when you told me. Now, I know you're Sundial. Deb, tell us about that first. Because, by the way, spoiler alert, Dan's is far better.
I will give you that. Whenever anyone asks us on the trail, I get a nod and he gets a laugh. So.
Yeah, good, of course.
So similar, as I was reading your book, Blue, when you're section hiking, now we're out there a lot with through hikers, but in the beginning, in the early years, we'd be by ourselves. We wouldn't run into any through hikers, because we do pick certain times of the year. Yeah. So we sort of had to give each other our trail names if we wanted them, and we did. So he named me Sundial because I do so much planning. Whenever he would ask me, hey, what time it is, I wouldn't have to look at my watch. I would just know how many miles we had hiked and perhaps what time we had started, and I can get us within 5 minutes of what time it is on most guesses.
Yeah,
that's almost unpleasantly spooky.
Yeah. It's all planning and knowing your pace. That's probably an Ironman.
That's your
thing
superpower.
Too.
That's your superpower. Yeah.
It doesn't work on a rainy day.
So Dan, now, audience beware. There will become a beep will come up in a minute, but I want Dan to say it in full. So tell me about FIIK, which is spelled FIIK.
You got it. Yeah. So Steve, we hiked together, and every time we would stop, other hikers would come up and say, "Hey, where'd you stay last night?" And or what are your shoes? Where are you headed? And since, as you've heard, Deb does all the planning, and my response is always, "If I know." So I've said it so many times that
Still makes me laugh. That
my trail name became FIIK, F-I-I-K, and stands for I know.
That is hilarious. Now, you didn't hear it, but I'm sure you can guess what he said. So what about your experiences out there? When a section hiker's done, what are you looking back on? For a lot of us through hikers, it's the camaraderie and so on. Do you still have that with others, or are you as section hikers getting something from that a through hiker isn't by the very nature of your respective hikes? Well,
as far as the camaraderie, because we're hiking so often now, we actually have gotten it. One of the funnest things this summer was, I followed I followed the Suttons, and I followed Supermom and Supergirl, and I've become friends with them. And so we were heading to Pennsylvania to do some trail magic for Supermom and Supergirl. And so we met them at their tent. We brought them some stuff, and then we did a hike that day, and then we came back to Old Forge Park, and we did 3 hours of trail magic, and just sat at the park, had a blast. We got Eric Patterson Wild to join us, and
Nice.
And his friend that we've been friends with for years, Soggy. He and
Best trail angel out there.
He went to high school together. And so I would say 20 plus people came through, and it was the end of the day. So the shelter was a mile away. No one was in a hurry. So they sat with us for hours and we had a blast. Well, as section hikers, we go where we want. So a few weeks later, we're finishing northern Pennsylvania and we run into at least 3 or 4 of those folks that we did Trail Magic.
Nice,
And they're like,
nice.
wait, Trail Magic, that was you guys. And then we ran
So you're
into
stalking
them
through
again.
hikers.
What's that?
You're
Exactly.
stalking through hikers.
Yes.
She's a
Yes.
stalker for sure.
That's hilarious.
But when we finished the whites and we came into Pinkham Notch, and now this is months later, and it's pouring rain at the end of the day, and we walk into the visitor center of Pinkham Notch, there's Bird Bath. And I'm like, Bird Bath? And he's like, Sundial. and that all goes back to that Trail Magic in Pennsylvania. So we have been able to form friendships with some of the folks that have been out there and then see them repetitively, which has been a blast, just with not all the miles under our feet that they have been doing it during that time.
No, I'm. It's something that it's not something I would do. For me, it would still be a through hike, unless I can't finish it, which makes it a section hike, I guess. But I can certainly see the attraction. But it's getting those legs every time. It must be. But you're fit anyway, and I'm not, so that could pretty much have something to do with it. So now that you've done most of the stuff, now when do you think you're going to finish? You've got about 1,200 miles to go. So when do you think what's the plan?
So I guess that's me since I'm the planner.
Of course, yes. Dan was nodding, yes. 'Cause it's a planning question. It's a logistics question.
Yeah, so we did the Smokies in May, and then we did that took us like 6 days, and then we did.
That's tough, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah.
Surprisingly tough. It was a real slap round the face to me, I must admit, both times.
Getting in and getting out are definitely some good climbs.
Oh, tell me about it, yeah.
Yeah, and we actually went Sobo. And,
okay.
And it's hard going for everybody that talks about it's harder than northbound. It's hard. It's the same. It's hard. And then we just did this 11-day section all the way from the approach up to Fontana. So we have that whole section, we have all the way through Max Patch done.
Right.
So next year, the goal is the same for next year, probably a 5 or 6 day in the spring and probably a 10 or 11 day in the fall. And so
Nice.
that'll get us another, 100 miles. And during the winter, we discovered last year, we absolutely love to winter hike. So we finished Pennsylvania in the winter last year, and we're gonna.
Is that by the way, Dan? Is that laughter in agreement or laughter?
Well, that's a whole different story in and of itself. So people talk about the rocks in Pennsylvania. We didn't see half of them because they were under 3 feet of snow.
Oh gosh.
Which was great. So we didn't deal with the rocks, and Deb didn't deal with the snakes, which he hates.
No, there you go. That was the reason for it, was it? No snakes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Have you had any wildlife encounters, by the way?
Sad to say, we don't see any wildlife. I mean, we got to see one bear in New Jersey, or at least a bear's butt running away. And
Nice.
I think we've run into one rattlesnake on the trail, and that is about it. Besides squirrels and deer, we just don't see any wildlife. I don't know what it is.
I mean, plenty of black snakes, but yeah, the at Mount Camara, which is another bonus of section hiking, all the through hikers, nobody wants to walk the extra mile or two, right?
Darn right.
To the amazing, and I don't blame them, but we do. So
Right.
we saw a stunning view and a rattlesnake
Nice.
while we ate lunch at Mount Camara in the Smokies.
Well, look, I'm so glad you reached out. It's interesting for me to speak to section hikers when I haven't had many section hikers on the show, and all I would say is that link between Ironman and triathlons and hiking I hadn't really thought of. And actually, one last thing: did any of your other competitors in those sports, did they ever make that transition as well?
You're nodding your head. Who you think?
Well, Shannon is off hiking now, and so there's several people that I think have shown a lot more interest in hiking, following along with some of the things that we're doing now. So
Right.
we see some interest, and Deb's. The one thing about Ironman also is, the community loves to mentor, And Deb ran. I was the president of our triathlon club for several years, and Deb actually ran the mentor program for the triathlon club, and giving back to the
Sure.
other athletes.
Nice.
And she's doing that in hiking now. Also, she's trying to get a girls' hiking night together, a weekend together. And she's taken some other friends out. She's taken her son out to the trail just to give them the experience of hiking. So with some of that reaching out into the triathlon community, some of the athletes are coming into more of the hiking community now also.
Nice, very nice. Well, you've done a good thing then. You brought more hikers on the trail. It's pretty cool. So I appreciate you reaching out to me, Deb, and keep giving me good guests to interview, because that's always helpful. And I just wish you well with the rest of your hiking.
I appreciate that, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much, Blue. Really appreciate it.
Take it easy then. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
What a together couple they are. Funnily enough, Deb was concerned after recording that what came across was not the Ironman and marathon successes, but more the teamwork and support that they both supplied to each other. I thought that came across well in the interview, Deb, so no worries there. In fact, you might want to check out Coach Deb in YouTube, where you'll see how close the two of them are as they share those sections of the AT. I'll have the link in the show notes. I'm also going to be speaking with a few more section hikers in the future, because they have additional things to share that maybe through hikers don't. Now it's Katie, and today we hear from her from Gorham in New Hampshire. Here she is. So we're back on with Katie. Hey Katie, how are you?
Hi Steve, I'm fine, thanks.
And you're in Gorham, New Hampshire.
I am. Wow, goodbye, Maine.
Oh dear. So what's the last week, in fact the last month, I suppose? I mean, how long have you been in Maine? Can you sum up Maine for us?
I can. So, of course, summited Katahdin was my first experience,
Yes.
and that was absolutely awe-inspiring.
Epic.
And epic. And then headed south through the 100-mile wilderness, and which started off pretty flat. Maybe the first 50 miles,
Yes.
pretty easy, I would say. Even one day I remember doing a 20-mile day, but as you know, it got more and more difficult as you
Sure.
went further south.
Yes.
And then, still to this day, I think my favorite section are the Bigelows, which
Yeah.
were just stunning. So,
It does make a difference on the day you go through, though, doesn't it? With all these mountains, you can't go through on a crappy day. It's not a great day generally, is it?
Right. But, a lot of the days here have, they kind of start off with this foggy, misty morning, and then it burns off and you end up with a sunny day. But truly the Bigelows were just beautiful, and had some big climbs as I went further south. The thing that really struck me are the alpine bogs. You climb a peak,
Yes.
and then there's a bog up at the top
Yeah,
of the
special
mountain.
treat. Yeah, special treat, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And oh my goodness, how many times I've.
But they're magnificent, aren't they? In their own way, they're still
Oh.
magnificent. Looking all around you,
Absolutely.
especially walking along those wooden platforms, which are precarious at the best of
Yes,
times, aren't they?
Oh, yes. And I think it depends on your perspective that day, whether you just really are disgusted by it or having fun with it. But just, the plant life is it's so amazing. You think of the Arctic tundra
Yes.
when you look at some of this, the plant life on these mountains. And so yesterday we ended up stealth camping in New Hampshire, and the night before we had stayed at a little site just before the border. So when we got up, it was right at the border.
And you passed the 2,000-mile marker going south, don't you? It's somewhere around Gorham, isn't it? I think I seem to remember.
Yes. And for me, I am almost, I have to total it up, but for me personally, I am close to 1,400 miles so far. So,
Are you getting there?
so yeah.
I did actually have a message this morning from somebody saying to me to warn Katie that the nights close in incredibly quickly in New Hampshire. So
Yes.
either rush
Yeah.
or, in fact, the answer is don't rush because it's dangerous. But just be aware of that. You're going to lose light pretty quickly. And you're not doing any night hiking, are you?
I've had the day I did Mahoosic Notch and Mahoosic Arm, and what else is up there?
That dreadful walk down from Old Spec, which is endless.
Old Spec, yes. By the time it had started raining when I was up on Mahoosic Arm,
right.
and I did that trip northbound.
That's right.
And was staying at a hostel and ended up hiking out in the dark because it was such a rigorous climb and descent that it just took so long. But that was a little over a 13-mile stretch, including Mahoosic Notch, which took me, I think, 3 hours. I figured.
So you say you're at Gorham. Have you reached Gorham yet in terms of the trip, or have you just shuttled to Gorham? Because that's on Route 2, isn't it?
I'm at Route 2. Yeah.
So you've got the Wildcats to come.
Yeah. Wildcats.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so racking my brain. There's an opportunity to slack pack.
Yes, is the answer. Yes, is the answer.
Oh my gosh. That would be another day that I'll end up coming down in the dark, but I'll bring a headlamp and I'll have extra batteries and backup cold weather gear and all the stuff you need. And there is one or two huts along the way. And if I do decide to do it, it'll be an early morning start, like just before dawn.
I'm sure.
But that will be a hard day.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling about it right now? Because not so much the weather's closing in, because it's still September, just about. But you soon get into October, and having lived, in New York for several years myself, the evenings do start closing in, and it gets a lot colder in New York. So I suspect further north, it's even colder at nights, isn't it?
Well, I've already seen that, in southern Maine. So, and even last night, you are prepared mentally to stealth camp wherever you have to.
Sure.
So you set your goal, you try to get to the goal, but if the dark's closing in and you're already incredibly fatigued, you just have to get down, you have to get somewhere that is out of the wind and you can stay warm.
Do you know the stealth sites? Because some of them are not obvious, are they? And they're quite difficult sometimes to find. Or do you have actually a list of where they are?
No, I don't have any list. I mean, sometimes you'll see notes on gut hooks.
Right.
And sometimes you just, you see it and you say, well, this is, now's the time.
Yeah. There's not always a spot, though, is there? There's not always a spot to camp. Set your tent up.
Not a nice spot. There's not always a nice spot, but almost always you can find something. It's just may not be. You may be down at the bottom of your tent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in a heap in the morning.
In a heap.
Yeah, I know exactly how you mean. Yeah. So, are you hiking with somebody now or not?
I am hiking. A woman named Ginger, trail named Ginger, and I are hiking, and so we're trying to make a plan, trying to be safe. Last night we ended up, I don't know if you remember, when you first come into New Hampshire, there's no markings on the trail. When you're heading, especially southbound, you get to, I think it's called, I don't remember the name of the pond, but they even say it in AWOL, not many marks here or something along that line.
You're right. There is one by a pond, and you're right. We did get lost around there. But I tell you what,
we ended up just camping right by that pond because we were like, well, we can wander around here at dusk, you know, and try to find where we are or wait and be fresh in the morning. And as soon as we woke up, we saw right where we needed to go, you know, in a better light.
Well, gut hooks does one of the most irreplaceable things about gut hooks is that if you have it open and you do wander off trail, it'll tell you where you are relative to the trail.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can bushwhack your way back.
I really do depend on gut hooks, and you can use it, you know, the GPS, you don't have to have cellular. So it's all satellite, and that makes a difference as long as your phone's charged.
Sure. Are you happy with your pace right now?
I am happy. Yes. Yeah. And I don't mind, you know, so I'm a little concerned about doing this big slack pack, but I don't mind doing it as long as I feel like I can do it, be safe. I've gotten much more confident at coming down off these big rock face walls.
Right.
You know, I'm, you know, it's just a matter of doing it a million times, and you find where you can put your foot in your hands and you can sit down. And so,
but you're always aware. You're always aware. It's just one wrong step, aren't you? Especially when you're coming down and you're hanging on to roots of trees which are rocking around anyway. You know, it's quite an obstacle course, and you know, you're not going to find New Hampshire any easier, I promise you. You know, you've got those. You're coming up to. I mean, soon after Pinkham, you've got, I think, Madison, which is a beautiful mountain. Washington. You've got Washington soon as well, haven't you?
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it, and the one thing I love is and people have told me this, is that it's one of the areas you will really work hard and hike hard, but then you're rewarded when you get to the top.
Yes.
You know, it's like, you know, it's not just a hidden summit or, you know.
Yeah. So we're certainly on Madison. It's one of the most dramatic mountains. It's what I always imagine a mountain should look like, just drawn, comes to a point at the top, you know. And I remember flying up it when I was hiking there. Coming down, it's a long way down. So you're going southbound at Madison. So that is going to be quite a hike up, I tell you. You know, think about that one. That's going to be, you know what? But it's none of it's easy. You know, you're going to find it challenging. No. You're going to find it challenging. That's all.
Yeah, I do find I go up the mountains a lot faster, a lot faster than coming down. I just, you know, it's like the coming down is, I'm still dealing with my fear, you know, of heights and when I'm going up, it's like, oh, I'm just climbing this, and I don't think about it. I just do it, and it works out. But then you can see when you're coming down.
So have you started looking ahead now in terms of what do you, I mean, this time it's now Tuesday. I'm going away to Costa Rica on Thursday, and I won't be back till the Tuesday after. So we're going to speak again, possibly Wednesday morning next week. In the next week, how far through New Hampshire do you think you'll be? Have you thought about that?
Well, you know, they do say that you're slowing down a good bit.
You are.
But I think it will be the same pace that I was doing in southern Maine. And I was able to get, you know, at least 10-mile days in.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
a 10-mile day in New Hampshire seems longer. A 10-mile day in New Hampshire seems longer than Maine, I think, anyway, from my recollection.
Yeah. I've sort of, I look, the New Hampshire section is about 180 miles, maybe 160 miles.
All right.
And I'm thinking that 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, you'll be through it then. Yeah,
should do it. Do it.
Yeah.
And so, and really the rhythm of the day and what I've been doing with Ginger, you know, as we're hiking is. We're awake well before dawn, and you know, as soon as we have light, we're walking.
Good.
So there's no light. We're not wasting any light. Another thing we're doing is we're eating our hot meal around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and then we can continue to hike
till it gets dark,
up until it's almost dark. So we're really working hard to not waste any of our day. And
makes for long days, though, doesn't it? That does make for long days.
It's a very long day.
But you know what? If you're enjoying it, if you're getting there, how bad can it be?
Yeah, you take breaks and you remind, sometimes you have to remind yourself, this is a privilege to be able to be out here doing this.
You're volunteering for this, yeah.
That's right. No one made me do it.
That's right. Well, look, I'm glad you're well. Glad you're in Gorham. I remember Gorham very well. I got ill there, unfortunately. Nothing to do with nothing to do with the trail. I just got a terrible cold or something like that. And I had to spend 2 or 3 days off, and I was very nicely looked after. But best of luck with the Wildcats. It's a wonderful hike. It's just kind of exhausting, but it's wonderful. So I hope you'll enjoy that. And I'll catch up with you when I get back from Costa Rica, okay?
Okay, sounds great, Steve. Have a good trip.
Cheers, and you. Bye.
Okay. All right, bye-bye.
By the way, thanks so much to the listener who reached out to warn Katie of those closing daylight hours in New Hampshire. I'm sure she's going to notice it herself in the coming weeks, but it was nice to get that warning and pass it on. Cheers. And while I'm thanking people, I hope you all noticed the new show-specific artwork today. Paul Collins, or Skunk Ape, who has been doing the artwork for our Jester show for some months now, volunteered to do it for the Trail Dames and for this show. Thanks, Paul. I think it looks great. And thanks today to our donors, as ever. This past week, recurring donors Jessica Diaz, Melanie Swisher, Hugh Ickrath, Lars Hubbard, Michelle Brown and Anne Hinton have stuck with us. If you find what we do at the network to be valuable to you, then please consider donating. You can find donate buttons literally all over our hikingradionetwork.com website. And your donation will be valued just as highly as every single one that we receive. And remember, I'm still offering my 3 books at Trail Days pricing, so that's just $31 for all 3 printed books, to include postage to all 50 United States. Just mail me a check payable to Mighty Blue Publishing to P.O. Box 6161, Sun City Center, Florida 33571. If you want me to sign the books for you, just let me know, either by email or when you send the check. Cheers. Finally today, Winton Porter's Passing Through introduces us to the Mountain Crossing's famous shakedown. Winton has a couple of interesting characters to deal with who are a little reluctant to part with their precious belongings. I'll see you next week. Chapter 7, Crawfish and Jambalaya. When I meet Chief, he's full of questions. I'm following up on a mysterious signal from Buddy that Nate might need some help. When I heard this, I was just returning from an errand in town, and as soon as I entered the shop, I could feel a tense hush in the atmosphere. That's an odd thing for a mountain crossings air. Too many heads turned toward the door when I came in, as though everyone was waiting for me, and I heard voices in the back room. Buddy was at the register, and he pointed with his thumb, speaking much more quietly than usual. Nate might need some backup, he said. He raised his eyebrows meaningfully. Now, the customer service end of what we do at mountain crossings often consists of smiling at people who have gone out of their minds. Nate happens to be very good at this job because he is blessed with an even temper. His patience with customers is instinctive, genuine, and almost inexhaustible. When Nate needs backup, it's a big deal. In the back room, I find Nate helping one hiker with footwear, while another, a huge guy whose wet, musty gear is strewn all over the floor as though it was set out for a garage sale, hounds him with questions. I'm done dumping out of my pack. Will you come and look at it? How long do you think this is going to take? I don't see myself leaving any of this behind. Shouldn't take long, should it? For the past 5 days, across 40 miles of rugged mountains, this guy has lugged more than 70 pounds. The scales will give the exact figure, but I can see at a glance that it's more than he needs, and that Nate keeps tucking and retucking a loose strand of his long, curly hair behind his ear. It's a habit with him that grows pronounced and jerky when he's mad. I can see my help is needed. Let me introduce you to Chief, Nate says. He's from New Orleans. Nate leaves us after making sure I've caught his ironic look. He's all yours. Nate came with the place. We inherited each other, a legacy that enriched both of us. His sharp mind, athleticism, and can-do attitude made me like him instantly. In those days, he worked at the store 4 days a week and lived on the trail the other 3. He preferred a tent and a breeze over a mattress and air conditioning. He also served as a ridge runner, hired by the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, ATC, to be, for the Georgia section of the AT, a sort of peripatetic concierge, overseer, and educator in LNT, the Leave No Trace ethic. The job actually paid you to walk, and Nate loved to walk. He soon became one of my most trusted friends. He and his wife, Tina, were surrogate uncle and aunt to my 2 girls. Sierra and Alison would seize every opportunity to spend time with the couple, roaming through woods, dancing among the trees, looking for wild berries or following animal tracks. Nate and I worked together for 6 years until he and Tina moved back home to Pennsylvania. They left my family feeling, for a while, too small and too quiet when they found new challenges and new opportunities. We were happy for them, but from time to time it still feels to us as though 2 of our own are missing. Chief is an enormous man who carries most of his weight in the middle. He moves with great consideration for his gut at a backward-leaning waddle that thrusts it proudly forward. He's one of those courtly, portly Southern men who consider their girth a sign of dignity and wisdom. I expect a downright crushing handshake, and I get one. "Nice to meet you, Chief," I say, returning the mightiest grasp I've got. "Pleasure to meet you, Winton." "Winston?" "Winton," Chief says, bearing down hard. We take the opportunity of this clench to size each other up. I've already noticed that he's favouring his back and also his feet. The latter must be blistered because the soles of his black leather boots are being held together with duct tape. What I see better now is the jackrabbit look in his eyes. He's tired, he's out of his element, and he can't quite hide it. My impression is of a man who's used to projecting the image of a tough guy in charge. The trail has given that image a beating. He's done his best to put himself back together, but the swagger has gone tender-footed. The sweat isn't drying on his forehead, and his thinning hair, which back home would be a tidy comb-over, is all over the place. He's looking for someone he can trust, and my polite attempt to break his hand seems to encourage him. When he releases his grip, I feel I've passed some kind of test. Gesturing at his mounds of scattered gear, I tell him we should be able to get him straightened out in a few hours. "A few hours?" he bellows in a Cajun baritone. I nod, smiling. "First, I want you to break everything down into the following categories that are on this piece of paper," and I sound out my list to him. Clothing, water, cooking, first aid, personal, miscellaneous, sleep system, tent. Then I tell him, "I've got a small situation that I need to attend to and will return shortly. Do you have any questions?" "Nope, I think I can handle it." Chief was a hard-to-please hiker, and that's a more precise description than it seems. The hard-to-please hikers are a distinctive type of customer. They come in beaten, humbled, tired and disoriented from carrying too much stuff, and then take offence when you suggest leaving any of that stuff behind. They're starting to wonder whether hiking will ever be fun. Some come in thinking they have the answers, others having forgotten the question, and many wonder, why in hell am I still doing this? The problem isn't meanness or stupidity, but self-doubt. The hard-to-please hikers don't believe they can be helped by me or anyone. They don't know whether they're strong enough to keep going. Their first reaction to my store, my staff, and our services is a kind of self-pitying scoff. "Do you honestly think you can help me?" That gives our ability too much credit and at the same time not enough. Too much because we were once inexperienced hikers ourselves, and we don't know anything that's beyond them to learn. Not enough because what we do know can help them, despite their doubts. My work with these people takes the form of self-defense then. I have to persuade them that what I'm doing is not absurd, that my staff and I are not fooling ourselves, that we really can help them travel faster, more comfortably, and more safely along the trail, and that they really are strong enough to keep going. Attending to my small situation, I drink a cup of coffee at the Overlook, enjoying a moment of calm before I return to Chief. I find him seated on the floor, going once more over the checklist, scratching his head. "Chief, thank you for your patience. It gets a little crazy around here sometimes, and things don't always go as planned." "No problem," he says. "I got nothing but time." "So you're from New Orleans. What did you do there?" "Police officer with an NOPD, 9th Ward, for 30 years. He pulls out his badge and proudly shows me an ounce of nickel and 2 ounces of leather. I take the badge and inspect it. "How long have you been planning this trip?" "Years. I finally got the time to do it." How do you feel about your decisions? I glanced down at the now neatly stacked gear. I feel a little stupid. I really think that I have too much stuff, but I can't think of anything that I can get rid of right now. I tell Chief that his badge won't impress a bear much, but his gun might. We'll start with that. Often the hikers who benefit most from mountain crossings shakedowns, our item-by-item, ounce-by-ounce pack consultations, are those who start off feeling embarrassed by the process, as though it were a variety of indecent exposures. Spreading all you've got on the floor, waiting for a stranger to tell you what your possessions reveal about you, can be intimidating. Unfortunately, many hikers, by the time they reach our shop, have come to expect doubtful looks and scolding from others. Their friends have told them, "I can't imagine living 5.5 months in the woods." Their colleagues have asked them, "What about your job?" Various others have called their actions lunacy or irresponsibility, often the same souls who raised them and fed them. What these hikers need is a welcome, and so we try to make the shakedown a welcome to serious hiking. We do what serious hikers do. We talk about what they're carrying and why, which gear they need and which gear they don't need. Yes, but also which lucky charm, which book, which favourite sweater. A Go Freezer might have hard and fast rules about what can and can't be carried, but we don't. We try to balance the well-being of the hiker's back and feet with the needs of the hiker's soul. A Baptist hiker will never mail his Bible home, and a cop will hike with his gun. Billy Bumblefoot hangs onto the hardwood staff he loves, even when, as he knows perfectly well, it alone outweighs a pair of the latest carbon fibre trekking poles. Once I pointed out as much to him and he said, "Then I guess the stick will hurt you more when I smack you upside the head with it." It's not just a lighter pack that eases the load, after all. It's knowing there are people who don't think walking in the woods is crazy. "Where's your gun, Chief?" He shifts his weight from haunch to haunch and drops into a low, hesitant voice. My gun?" Like a child who has just been caught with a firecracker in his pocket. "Yes, what is it, a Glock 22 or a 22C? "It's a 22C. Now his voice relaxes. The gun talk gives his features a happy glow. "Smart choice. It's a little lighter by about half an ounce and has less recoil. Did you bring the 10 or 15 round magazine?" "Only 10, he says, adding like a good student, "It was lighter." "Nice. We just have to work around it. The entire thing will weigh about 29 ounces with the loaded magazine." Finally satisfied that I'm not about to try convincing a 30-year police veteran to send his gun home, Chief relaxes his shoulders and leans back on his hands. We spend the next 2 hours assessing the need for every piece of clothing, every bandage, cotton swab and pill, every match, lucky charm and lashing strap. I try to talk him out of gear that he thinks is necessary, such as the 36-inch machete or the brick-like FM 21-76 Department of the Army Field Manual Survival. He gives in after a while once he's changed the subject and spun another tale of his days on the force. He has me understand that New Orleans, like the saloon in Star Wars, is a scene of more or less constant murder and mayhem. He seems to take a little pride in this. He needs the gun, he says, because he put a lot of bad guys in jail, and now they're out, dozens of them, and they want him dead. He tells me exactly how John F. Kennedy was assassinated. The kill shot, he says, was from the storm drain on the north side of Elm Street. He's been married to the same woman for 35 years, Brandy. He swears many times that Brandy is the best cook in the history of the world. Back in New Orleans, Brandy is waiting for Chief to recover from what she considers a spell of temporary insanity and come home. She believes that if the good Lord had intended us to go from Georgia to Maine on foot, he wouldn't have given us cars. After repacking and checking the fit of the pack, Chief and I walk over to the scale. I flick the switch to light up the digital pad. "Okay, Chief, moment of truth. Take off the pack. What do you think it weighs?" "I don't know, a lot less, maybe 43 pounds. "I would say that we're at about 34 pounds, with the gun, 10 rounds, food and no water." I set the pack on the scale. The figures swing crazily for a moment, and then it reads 33.5. "Good thing this isn't Price is Right," I say. Chief steps back from the scale, eyes wide, shouting happy Cajun noise. I can tell he's impressed, but I have no idea what he's saying. Something like, "Look at that, for true." "What?" "For true, for true." "For true." "Yeah," I say, "I don't think that scale's lying to you." Seizing my hand again, he now gurgles his thanks, pumping my arm as though he wishes, in his gratitude, to rip it right off. "You all are just amazing. God, I didn't think that'd happen. I lost 27 pounds. When I get loose of that horrible grip of his and assure him I've been glad to help, he smacks me hardly in the shoulder and demands to know what he can do for me in return. Maybe something from New Orleans, he suggests. What do you like? You don't have to do that, I say. No, he wallops me again. I want to. What'd you like? I think for a second. Well, I ain't ever had crawfish. Send me some crawfish sometime. This delights him and he promises he'll send some dressed, straight from the Quarter. I assume he means the French Quarter. I don't know what dressed means. I never do find out exactly. The other shakedown that day is 36-year-old Mickey Cascarillo of Los Angeles. We learn exactly how old he is when he asks us to guess. I say 32 and make his day. We tag him with the trail name Casper. He's originally from New York and followed a girlfriend out west. She got a role in a sitcom on ABC. He too planned to make it in the industry. The relationship fell apart about 3 months after their arrival. He did a few toothpaste commercials and had a few one-liners in some no-name movies. It didn't pay the bills, so he decided to sell real estate. He did that until he burned out. And now I'm here, he declares, correctly enough. Where am I again? Am I still in Georgia? Casper bought all of his gear, with the exception of a cigarette lighter, from a Big Five sporting goods on Wilshire Boulevard. It's a mess of bad choices. First, he selected for his body's 6'2" frame a kid's pack. Then he picked out a discontinued model stove from a closeout sale. He didn't pay much for this stove, but then he shouldn't have, since there probably isn't a replacement fuel canister for it anywhere in the United States. The arm on his crank-to-charge flashlight snapped off in the cold, and his cotton poly sleeping bag is soaked right down to the paisley fleece lining. His water filter froze on its first night in action. The swelling ice put a 3-inch crack in the casing. His tent, which he was proud to say he got on sale for $29.99, is 60 inches long, or 50 cents an inch. It wouldn't have been a bad deal if he'd been a foot and a half shorter. His clothing is mostly cotton, with 2 exceptions, his long underwear and a leather jacket that weighs about 5 pounds. It's my first tough love shakedown of the week. Casper, this is crap. If you keep moving through these mountains with this stuff, we are going to be carrying your frozen corpse out in that wet sleeping bag. Hope you kept the receipt. Oh yeah, he says. He reaches into one of his jacket's 15 pockets. The operation involves a lot of Velcro and zippers and produces a foot-long strip of paper. How did you spend $1,012.32 and walk out of that store with only 2 pieces of equipment worth keeping? And what's up with this jacket, man? This isn't the wild one. Well, the guy who helped me said that he walked on the trail before. He sounded like he knew what he was talking about. And I like this jacket. Come on, this is a nice jacket. I shake my head. I'll get a box for you to throw all this stuff into, and we'll send it back to Big Five in the morning. The jacket goes home too, unless you plan on riding a motorcycle out of here. In the meantime, I'll pull some gear together and help you get safe again. Capiche? An hour later, having prepared about $800 in useless equipment for transit back to Wilshire Boulevard, Casper is smiling again. He thinks all his new gear is pretty cool. He'd never heard of Gore-Tex before. He carries his things to the front counter to check out and meets Buddy. The late afternoon hikers are starting to come in for a night at the hostel. Where are you from, Buddy? Casper asks. Jersey, Buddy yaps, exaggerating the inflection for theatrics. Oh yeah? I grew up in East Orange. Once they've traced each other's routes to the exact street corner, they exchange a series of personal insults. Apparently this is some kind of weird Yankee bonding ritual. Casper tells Buddy it's no wonder that he's bald and ugly, because he's probably the result of inbreeding, like the rest of his neighbourhood. Buddy picks up Casper's new jacket and shows him which arm goes in which hole. A small crowd at the register is taking in the show. Buddy rings Casper up on the register and calls out the total. That'll be $653.38, East Orange. For that much, even you ought to be able to stay alive a couple of days. Casper flips through a stack of credit cards. Here, try this one. What, you want me to blow on it for good luck? If you think it will help. Buddy scans the card, waits a minute, then cries out, Declined! Hey, Mr. Clean, why don't you say that a little louder? Casper whispers. So Buddy obligingly turns to the rest of the shop, now completely customer-packed, and announces loudly, Declined! All eyes turn to the front counter. It's okay, everybody, Casper yells. I have another one. And with laughter and applause, Casper is welcomed.